Okay, thanks, Jatin. Very good morning to all of you. I'll quickly introduce myself before we get into further details. Like Jatin mentioned, I'm working in IT industry for around 14 years. Last 10 years, I'm working with Microsoft, and currently I'm a solution architect in Microsoft. And during this 14 years of journey, last 8 years have been on Microsoft Azure, and I have been part of various solutions related to IoT, machine learning ops, large custom developments, data modernization platforms. So various different kind of solutions as or products what I've been part of during this journey. What I intend to do in next 1 hour or so is to share with you guys about my experiences around Azure, and to try to bring out the benefits that you can reap out of learning it. And at the same time, we'll also talk about why Ethans. It's think of it in broadly three parts is what I'm going to focus on. The very first part is going to be about cloud computing per se. Why do I need to learn cloud computing? When we throw that out of the park, then we move to the next one, which is okay, fine. Cloud computing is okay, but now what? There are so many options available, be it AWS, Azure, GCP, and couple of more. So why do I pick Azure? And once we settle on that one, then we will come to the third pillar, which is why Ethans. So broadly, this is going to be focused around these three things, and I would love to hear back from you guys in terms of any questions, queries, and would be happy to answer them. Like Jatin mentioned, keep them coming in the Q&A window or the chat window as and when you have any doubts. Okay, so let's get started. And before we talk about the Microsoft Azure cloud, I would like to spend 5 minutes in why cloud itself to answer the question, why do we need to go with the cloud? And one of the analogy that I like a lot is the electricity grid analogy. So think of a time before there were electricity grids, and if you were to set up a manufacturing plant, then you have to create your own electricity generation unit. And if your manufacturing plant is, let's say, you are running it at a high productivity during winters, but during summers the productivity is at 50%, still you have to take care of maintenance of all of your electricity generation unit. Now after that, a revolution came wherein this electric grid concept came into picture. And as of today, if I have to set up a factory, I no longer go and create my own electricity generation unit. Rather, I will take a connection, and as and when I will be using that electricity, I would be paying at a particular charge. So now it is more like pay as you go. And that resulted in couple of things. One, of course, the cost saving, because unlike earlier times when you have to maintain a unit which either you are using or you are using at its half of the capacity, now all of that is gone. You no longer have to maintain electricity generation. Somebody else is doing it for you. You are just consuming it and you are paying it based on the consumption. But even bigger than that, the impact is speed to market. So the time it is going to take you to set up a factory today versus it would have taken you earlier has gone down drastically. Same, this analogy fits pretty good with the IT, wherein your electricity generation unit is replaced with your on-prem data center. And whenever you are planning to, let's say, launch a new software into the market, or let's say a website, a product, anything, right, which of course you need machines to host it on. So one way, which was on-prem, wherein you set up your own small data center, the security of that, the maintenance of that, upgradation of the machines, all of it is what is your responsibility. Instead of that, you hand over that responsibility to somebody else, which we call as cloud providers, and you start paying only as much you use it. So Initially when this concept came into play, there were a lot of apprehensions, and of course one of the major reason behind that was security. How can I be comfortable my data is sitting in somebody else's custody? So Microsoft has huge data centers, but so far all of my data was sitting physically in my office location. I had my own data center, the security of data center was in my control. Now all of a sudden all of this data is going to be sitting somewhere else, and there was people were uneasy about it. They were not that comfortable. And then over the time, all these cloud providers worked extensively in knocking off all those apprehensions. And today we are sitting at a time wherein the any development, at least any new development that is happening, most of it is going on the cloud. All the legacy applications, the rate at which those are moving on the cloud is at its all-time high. So this cloud technologies, cloud providers or cloud solutions have become new norm, and everybody is very much comfortable with it. Even the people who have not yet moved are now planning to move. They are in the strategizing mode. All these big cloud providers are doing the digital transformation journey for all these enterprises. So that's what the cloud is, and that's how important it is today. Because in another, at max 1 to 2 years, uh, there is gonna be a, already it has captured a huge market. But even if there are some bigger players who are still on prem, they have also started this migration, and pretty soon you are gonna see that all the jobs around us are gonna have some blend of the cloud computing profile. So now, with this, we move to the next part, which is fair enough. Cloud computing is important. I understand it. But then when I look at it, I see so many options out there, which is true. Like you see Microsoft, you see AWS, you see Google Cloud, and there are more, right? Now, how do I decide which one to take up on? And as a as an entry level developer or as a lateral, whenever I tend to make that decision, I always keep my career prospects, that with which particular cloud, if I learn, if I invest my time and money in Azure, what is the return I'm going to get, versus if I put the same time and amount in AWS or GCP, right? That's the tendency that we have. So what we will gonna talk about now is how Azure is gonna benefit you in your career growth, in your career aspirations, in advancements, and so on. Uh, First we'll talk about the journey of Microsoft Azure, and then we will get into the comparison of Microsoft Azure with rest of the clouds. And although I'm working in Microsoft, but doesn't mean I have worked in multi-cloud solutions, wherein I have also used services from GCP, I have used services from AWS. So I'll give you a fair amount of comparison. And how will it help you knowing Azure? How will it help you to progress in your career? So with Microsoft Azure, the announcement, this is the timelines which have been mentioned here in terms of when was it announced and so on. But around the timelines, I want to call out two important factors which you should keep in mind. One, AWS started its journey in 2006. Microsoft Azure formally started its journey in 2010. So Microsoft Azure started 4 years after AWS was already there. And as of 2019, as of last 12 months, the growth rate of Microsoft Azure has been double the AWS. It has not yet caught up to the market share of AWS, but the growth rate of Microsoft Azure is double to that of AWS. And we'll talk about why so. So on the timelines, uh, it is right now Microsoft has also, in collaboration with lot of open source products, be it MongoDB is now available on Microsoft, various different open source products. They are initially when Azure came in, right? It was kind of a close ecosystem wherein Microsoft technologies, be it .NET related applications, be it Windows Server, those were the first class citizens. Now that landscape has changed. Microsoft has acknowledged that if they have to win this space, they can no longer treat third party or competitor products or technologies uh, as second class citizens. So they decided to embrace the open source, and suddenly that changed the complete game for Microsoft Azure. Then, when we talk about the cloud, when we talk about Microsoft Azure, and this, when I explain IaaS and PaaS, this is not really very specific to Microsoft Azure. It is for any cloud computing technology. So this offering, cloud computing offering that comes to you, it comes in the threefold basically: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. For right now, we are keeping focus on the two. And if I have to put it in a very simple words, if I have to give you a real world example, think of yourself going to a new city, and there you have two options to stay. One option is, let's say, you can stay, rent a flat, plain vanilla flat, and you have to put up everything. You have to set up your kitchen, you have to buy a washing machine for your laundry, and you have to buy bed, mattress, all of that is what you have to set up. And then for the room, of course, you are going to pay some rent per month. The second option that you have is you go and you put up in a hotel, wherein the moment you enter the room, you have everything in place. You have laundry service, kitchen is there in the hotel. You just have to order. Bed is there every morning. Housekeeping ladies coming and cleaning it up for you. So all of that is there. Now the hotel is pass. The flat is IaaS, wherein in case of infrastructure as a service, you get a machine like a flat, and then you have to do all the setup that you need. Let's say you have to install something. Let's say you have to deploy something, some application. You have to set up the network, ports. All of that is something which is your ownership. When you go to PaaS, there are offerings, for example, Azure uh, App Service, wherein you don't have to really worry about too much of it. All you need to focus is on the code, and then everything else behind the scenes, be it the security patch updates, be it the Windows updates, all of that is something that is taken care by the service itself. So that analogy might help you to distinguish between the two, but at the same time, it should bring out another factor, that IaaS services are always cheaper than PaaS. And of course, if you are living in a hotel versus you are taking a flat, and the cost that you're going to pay in the hotel is going to be more than the flat, and that is understandable, because with the pass you are going to get so many additional services, so somebody has to pay for it, and of course it's going to be you. So pass is a lot more, pass is more costly than is. But the advantage with the pass is your time to hit the market, your development life cycle is reduced. Think of it again, go back to the same example. If you have to start living, to make that flat livable versus going and just checking in into the hotel room. So in case of pass service, your your main effort, your focus is only on building that logic. Everything else is taken care by the provider. So that's where the pass is really handy, wherein you have reduced time to market. You have you can focus your effort more and more on your functionality rather than taking care of network and infrastructure. Now when we talk about Azure, Azure has lot of services in both the spaces, and here I want to call out one difference between AWS and Azure. So when it comes to IaaS, both are comparable, but when it comes to PaaS, that is where Azure beats AWS hands down. And there is a specific reason for that. Microsoft, even if you think about pre-cloud era, right, when Microsoft didn't enter into the cloud, Microsoft had a very quite a big and I would say very comprehensive ecosystem of developers. It has its .NET was there, it had its IDE, Visual Studio, and then it also had its TFS, which is Source Control Server. It had Outlook, Dynamics, Bstock Server, so many product, Active Directory, so many products. So it had a very rich ecosystem, and it had a pretty good development force around it. There were a lot of developers across the globe who were developing for these products and who were building solutions for these products. Now, when Microsoft had to move to the PaaS offering, they had so much of experience with tooling, with developer interaction, that they made it really easy. The kind of integration today, if you take up Visual Studio, you take up Visual Studio Code, or you take up some other IDs as well, they have such a seamless integration. Even the kind of debugging experience that you have for PaaS services. So if it is a PaaS service that you are building, and as a developer, of course, you would be interested there. So many times it will happen so that you have to do some debugging, the kind of remote debugging capabilities you get, and all of that they were able to pull it off because of their extensive experience pre-cloud era on the programming platforms, IDEs, and at the same time, advantage of having such a rich development base out there, developer base out there. So that's where they are really powerful. They are really good when it comes to the PaaS offering. Now, we will now talk about where does it stand? How is it performing? Because, like I said, they started 4 years later than AWS. So, what is the reality of today? In if you go back, try to do this, Google out the studies from like 2013, 2014. Try to find out the market study on the cloud providers, the standing of Microsoft on that. You will find so many articles which are simply saying Microsoft does not have a future in here, AWS has already captured the market, and uh, there were very few who were ready to believe that okay, somebody can come and compete with AWS because it is already with such a lead, and its position is so very strong. And then when you stand today, and if you go and try to find out articles of 2019, 2018, you will see the reversal of the story. Microsoft growth in terms of cloud compute or cloud computing has been fabulous. Like the way it has taken the space in there, and especially from enterprise. And I'll tell you that this is not something which has happened overnight. A lot has gone into it, and there is a background for it, because like I said, Microsoft was already present in lot of enterprises because of its various products, again, be it Outlook, be it Active Directory, be it Dynamics, be it Bistock server. There were so many Microsoft products which were already being used by these enterprises, Windows machines, Windows servers, right? Now, what today, when Azure stands, because of such a good enterprise capture, it is a very popular cloud provider when it comes to enterprises. And that's precisely the reason why it is being used by 95% of the Fortune 500 companies, because it is it it already had that foot in the door for those companies. One, second, earlier, which used to be license based purchases, they were able to come up with the very nice sales strategies in which they can compensate for it, give additional discount to enterprises and so on. But the end result is, if you take up any big enterprise, you will find that they are on Azure. And like the number talks for itself when we say 95% of Fortune 500 companies. So when it comes to, and or even government cloud, so US, if you guys are following the news around IT, you would know that US government has accepted, and for most of its project, because again, when we talk about cloud, right, like I was mentioning earlier, people had apprehensions about the security of data and so on. Now think of it from the government perspective. When government projects has to be delivered, it is even more critical. And all US government projects have been consistently awarded to Microsoft Azure because of their trust in impeccable security offerings that it has. So it has made its mark, and the kind of growth it is showing, is fabulous. So that is where it stands as of today. Now, this we kind of talked about a little bit, wherein we say that earlier you have to have the on-prem data center, and now we are talking about moving it to the cloud. But in between there is a state which is hybrid state, because when as an enterprise you are planning to move to the cloud, now one jerk shift is not a possibility for any big enterprise. That's a reality. You can't say that, okay, today morning everything is going to be on the cloud, and it's just a cutoff between on-prem and I'm directly moving to the cloud. It doesn't happen that way. So you come up with a strategy, and as part of that strategy is could be that you decide to do a phase wise migration. That, okay, I have 500 applications running, and in phase 1 I will move 200 applications, in phase 2 I will move another 100 application, in phase 3 I will move remaining 200 application. So there is going to be certain time in which you are going to be in the hybrid mode, which means some of your resources are running on the cloud, some of your resources are running on prem. This again is one of the thing which Microsoft Azure has its strength on. And towards the end, you guys might be thinking on pretty much every point when I'm saying Microsoft Azure has its strength on, then um, what is AWS is having its strength on. I'll talk about that also so that you get a fair comparison. But in terms of enterprises, when it comes about the migration, uh, because of the kind of strong capability of hybrid support that Microsoft Azure has, lot of them tend to tilt towards Azure, because they know they can't do it in one single shot. They will need an intermediate state. In some cases this hybrid solution is the eventuality, because they don't want to move everything out there. They still say that, you know what, we are okay to move 60% of our resources, but these 40% I still want to remain on my data center because they might be extremely critical, or there could be other reasons for it. But then the hybrid solution is the end goal in that case. So whenever you talk about hybrid solutions, Azure again has a edge there in comparison to its competition. Now, why suddenly everybody is moving on the cloud? So in the beginning, we talked about two things. One of that was when we took the analogy with the electricity unit and all. So in that analogy, we talked about two factors, right? One was the cost, of course, that you no longer need to maintain your data centers, you no longer need to take care of upgrading it, and all of headache, a workforce which is continuously taking care of it. Second was your time to market increases, that you can very quickly now go to the market. But then there is one more thing which is extremely critical in today's world. And I think if you ask me, based on my experience, I will value it more than anything else. So in the initial part of the journey, the cost was really important. Time to market was also important. It is important even today. But something that has suddenly taken up a lot of space is the data. And as you would have heard for sure, that data is the new gold, right? Now, think around yourself. So many devices. If we just think of, let's say, IoT scenario, let's talk about a practical use case. Around you, you have so many devices. You might be driving a car, a motorbike. In your home you might have a fridge, AC, washing machine. So with the concepts of smart homes coming, autonomous vehicles coming, all of these machinery that you have around you is generating so much of telemetry data. A car is generating every second, it would be generating the speedometer reading, it would be generating every, let's say, 30 seconds the tire pressure. So much of data is getting generated. Now this data has to be stored somewhere, and if you go and tell somebody, you know what, store this data on prem, it would be a mammoth task. The kind of data center you have to build, and the kind of maintenance you have to put in, and everything. Now cloud has stood out in that space, wherein the the way they say that it has the unlimited storage and unlimited compute. So essentially what unlimited means is as much as you need, you can pay and you can get it, right? So when it comes to the data, the scenarios like this, wherein you have abundance of data coming in, which for so many years you didn't capture, but suddenly now you have to capture it because you want to bring in artificial intelligence. You want to be up in the market. Let me give you another real world example. There was a solution in which we just built a smart marketing campaign just to increase the revenue of the company by 0.05%, because that 0.05 was such a huge number. And the the reason I'm giving you this example is that for that 0.05% increase, they had to invest into moving all of their stuff into the cloud, getting all the data on the cloud, continuously getting new stream. Because unless you have a huge volume of data, your predictive models, your machine learning models, the quality of that is going to suffer. The more data you have, the better results you can get. There is a direct correlation, by the way. So data capacity has suddenly become a talking point, and cloud definitely stands out over here. Cost, we already spoke about. Data security, I have already given you an example that it's a stamp in itself that US government has consistently shown its trust in Microsoft Azure for most of its projects. And let me call it out that when we talk about Microsoft Azure, they have dedicated data centers for government and for the public. And in Microsoft Azure, there is absolutely no data which is sitting at rest and unencrypted. So everywhere in any Microsoft Azure service where you can put data on rest, it is always encrypted. So they take it really seriously. They have proved it. And that's why there is so much of trust that has gone into the Microsoft Azure, especially from the public domain. When I say public, I mean governments over here across the globe. Now, this is where we'll talk about when we are talking about the comparison. Why Azure? Why not AWS? Why not GCP? So I want to call out a couple of things here. And guys, this is again based on my experience. I started working on Microsoft Azure in 2012, and then I have done work on AWS, I think around 2017, and then GCP recently. Towards 2019 quarter two, I started on GCP. One thing is that I have learned, if you understand one cloud properly with the great details, not just at the high level, but from the basics, as in if you understand the fundamentals, if you understand the fundamental of clustering. Now, in Azure, that clustering offering might be called Service X. In AWS, it might be with a different name. There would be some differences between the two. But if you understand that concept, if you can hold on to the basics, it's not gonna be if you have a command on Azure, it's not gonna be like, okay, now if I have to, let's say due to whatever reason or out of your interest, you want to become a multi-cloud expert and I want to learn AWS, it's not gonna be a tedious job. What is important is that whichever cloud you pick, understand it from the concepts, not just on the name of the services. The service does this, the service does that. No, go to the in depth. And this is one thing that we are uh, that we are work in Athens, when we do train you, that is one of the points that we keep in mind. Although this is a Azure course, but it should not be limiting all the participants that I have. I should be ensuring that I am teaching them Azure, but I'm teaching them Azure with the fundamentals. Because if I do so, then after this course and even during the course, we keep you giving the corresponding comparison. Like if I'm telling you, okay, this is what Azure App Services, I will tell you all the concept of Azure App Service. How does that work underneath? And then I tell you, you know what? this is the corresponding service in GCP, this is the corresponding service in AWS. So what we do is we ensure that you are getting a cloud understanding from the fundamental, and then we try to expand your horizon by giving you some inputs, by giving you some data points, which you of course have to go read yourself, and make yourself more and more valuable, if I call it in terms of industry word. But I wanted to bring up this point that it is any cloud that you take up, it is really critical for you to always hold on to the fundamentals of the services. If you do so, believe me, for you to move from one cloud to other is not going to be a tedious job. Rather, you will find it easy. Only thing that you have to learn is terminology. Maybe that here a particular term is called X, in another cloud that is called Y, but you will understand the basic fundamentals that will really help you. Okay. With that, now we will focus on why Azure. Lower cost, it is cheaper in comparison to AWS. Higher security, I have given you some examples around that. Then increased productivity. The thing that supports increased productivity is again going back to the same fundamentals, because Microsoft had so much of experience with all these development tools, the languages, the .NET experience they had, the various product they have in the market. They had so much of interaction, so much of connect with the developer community, that it was so easy for them to capitalize that and build the tools around their cloud, which are very effective, very productive, and very simple for the end user, which is the developer in this case. So that's what they really brought on the table. And it is actually great. If you have ever got a chance, or if you will, when if you decide to do this course, you will see that that transition is seamless. It is not a steep ride. So that's one more reason why you should go with Azure first, is learning Azure is not a steep ride. Your transition from, even if you have not done any of the cloud computing, but the transition that Azure learning will give you is very, very smooth. And if you go through that smooth transition, understand one cloud, and from there, with that understanding, if you have to learn another cloud, it's not going to be a rocket science. It would be a very straightforward job to do. Global scale, of course, the data centers are available across the globe, and the availability of data center is really critical, because it helps you ensure the minimum latency. So many times there are restrictions. For example, if you take China, there are a lot of restrictions in terms of the data. Certain type of data cannot go out of China. Now think of it, if you have to build a solution for China government or for Chinese company. Now, for building that solution, if you decide that, okay, I want to go onto a cloud X, and that cloud X does not even have a data center in that province, then you can't deploy your solution. So the global scale, the presence, the number of data centers present in various location is also equally important. And that is also something that you have with Azure. Now, moving on to the next one, which is when we do a head-on comparison. So, of course, the pricing, you will see that Azure is very competitive in its pricing when you put it against AWS. Azure is embracing open source like anything, and this I have no hesitation in saying that this was not the case 4 or 5 years back. Earlier, it was more like a closed ecosystem wherein the Microsoft products were treated as the first class citizens, but that has changed and it turned around everything. And as of today, it is welcoming the open source products as much as it welcomes any Microsoft. And that's the result, what you are seeing over here, wherein it achieved more with open source. And uh, the point which is on the right hand side that I want to talk about, because when you get into industry, right, and uh, right now you might be in a developer position, some of you might be architect, pre-sale architect, administrators, but even if you're a developer, you will grow, and at some point in time in your career, you are going to be a decision maker from technical point of view, like so, or you are going to be a trusted advisor, or if you are looking for a job wherein you want to be a trusted consultant for clients who are looking for cloud movements and all, right? This point is really critical, wherein, as I said, because of such a powerful ecosystem, most of the enterprises has some or the other Microsoft product running into their system. It could be a Outlook only, but because of their existing Microsoft investment, it becomes very easy for Microsoft to move them over to the cloud. And with all these existing organization, because they have enterprise level agreements and all, that complete journey becomes much more smoother. So this is another advantage that Microsoft has, which nobody else has. The kind of different products out there in the market that Microsoft had before cloud era, and now Microsoft actually had moved all of them, like Office 365, right? Similarly, their Dynamics, their BizTalk is Logic Apps, Active Directory is Azure Active Directory. So they have moved all of these products also in the cloud, and this gives them an advantage wherever, whenever, in terms of whenever they talk to enterprise customers, they always have one or the other product of Microsoft, and from there they can, start taking them over to the cloud and be part of that journey, the digital transformation of the customer. So Microsoft Azure really is really placed great in that position because of this point highlighted on the right hand side on your screen. Okay. So now we spoke about the cloud, we spoke about the Azure, the strengths of the Azure, and so on. Now let's say you decided, you are very clear, okay, I have to do cloud computing, I want to learn Azure, but then the next question comes, why Ethans? And now we are going to focus another 15 minutes or so onto that. And before I get into it, before I go and talk about why Ethans, I want to talk about certain principles, uh, because that is really critical for me to let you know. So I'm pretty sure all of you at some point or other might have wondered, especially if you are from India, then because I can relate to that, you might have wondered about the education that you had, let's say the engineering degree, and you might have thought about it. How am I utilizing whatever I have learned during those 4 years into my current job? Those kind of questions are pretty common, right? And in this institute, as a professionals, that was one of the things that we thought about, that we are not trying to give dump knowledge which somebody cannot just use it. I mean, which is just another set of documentation lectures, and then when they go and start doing the real job, then it is completely different word. We want to bridge that gap. We don't want to be another institute wherein you are just given the knowledge of something to only crack an interview, but not beyond that. We want to be an institute wherein you get a knowledge, wherein you not only crack interview, not only crack certifications, but when you go on the day one of your job, you can excel from that time onwards. Your learning curve here should be a learning curve which will already put you in a different league when you enter the organization. And how do we do that? This is all fine on the, when I say it, saying it is all great, but then how do we achieve it? The way we achieve it is the trainers that we have. We ensure that we have the working professional trainers, and that too only from the top companies. uh, all the trainers are with extensive hands-on experience and are still working with the enterprise. So we don't want to have a disconnect. We don't want to have somebody who does not have a understanding on, or who is not hands on what is going in the industry, what are the kind of use cases. So let's say today when I talk to you about Azure, and if we are in a discussion, when if you, let's say, join the program and we are having this discussion, then every now and then we are going to talk about the use cases which are currently running in the market, which are, and it happens every, if you take a particular time frame, right? The use cases vary from time frame to time frame. For now, ML IoT is a hot topic. If you go back 5 years down the line, or 5 years back in the past, IoT ML was not that much of a use case. At that time, use cases were different. It was more around building just maybe, let's say, 3 tier applications or building distributed application. Today it is microservice. So we want to ensure that whenever we are giving you any kind of concept, that concept is not in isolation. A technology must be married with the business use case. Now, if you, if your trainer is having a real time understanding of use cases, because he is also working in an enterprise, then he can bring that on the table. And while telling you a concept, while telling you about virtual machine, he can also tell you, you know what, though I am teaching you about virtual machine, but now let's talk about where will you use it? Because tomorrow when you go in the company and there is a business problem that you have to solve, that is when you have to decide that do I use virtual machine, or do I go with a PaaS service? How will you make that distinction until somebody has already told you some of the use cases and helped you build that aptitude? And this is all on there is no right wrong textbook here, trust me. This all comes with the experience, and it is all about sharing that real time, real world experience with you. So I wanted to call out that principle that we follow because for me personally, that is one of the topmost priority, that ensuring everybody who is joining the institute, they must get a real world hands-on experience along with knowing the program that they are enrolling in. So with that principle, let's now move to that. What is the target for this program? Like, if you qualify any of this criteria, you should definitely, go for it. Kind of a slide it is, wherein either you're looking for, of course, upgrade, better job career opportunities, next gen technologies, and uh, want to undergo technical program to upgrade skills. So at the end of the day, think it this way: cloud computing is I cannot make the statement cloud computing is the future, because that statement is no longer true. Cloud computing is the present. That is what is true. And this present is here to stay for some time. These lines might sound cheesy, but this is the reality. If you go out there, you try to find out, you try to bing it, Google it, you will know that cloud computing is what is capturing market really fast. It has already become your present, and it is gonna stay that way. So there is no there's no workaround for it. You definitely get to learn this. Now the only question that you have to answer for yourself: how much uh, how much time can you afford without learning it? Or if I put it other way, do you want to be in the i- in among the people who are running first, as in you want to upgrade yourself quickly and get in there, or you want to wait until it becomes a compulsion? And then, of course, when things becomes a compulsion, then it's but obvious that situation is uh, not that smooth. Right now, if you are learning it, you are already enhancing it, and when rest of the world is trying to catch up with this, you are kind of a front runner. So it is only a matter of time. I'm pretty sure whether you decide it, whether you decide to go with it today or not, eventually you have to. So it's only about, you want to do it early, or you want to wait for it until it is a compulsion for you. So next, so this is a target one. Now, this is our snapshot on the program. So this is a classroom training program, uh, as in lot of so nowadays, especially after COVID, right? A lot of cases, what happens is, with the video, you have been handed over the videos, and then you are going through the videos and learning through it, and then there could be, let's say, a mentorship, 1 2 hour kind of a program. But here what we are trying to do is, again, why classroom training program? Why are you saying that I have to be sitting in the laptop and you want to be present on the other side of the laptop? It is all related to the very same thing, wherein we are not just sharing the technology with you, we are sharing the experiences, and these experiences are really invaluable because they are coming from the professionals who are working in this enterprise. And to do so, it has to be this kind of session wherein, if you ask me a question, right? I, I have worked, like I said, I have worked for in cloud for so many years, and during that journey, I have gone through with so many use cases, so many different scenarios. Now, when I try to give you those scenarios from my end, I might be able to give you only 20% of it. But let's say we are having this kind of a training wherein I am here, you are on the other side, and you ask me a question. And so many times it so happens as your question will remind me of a real world situation, of a particular scenario I got into. Against it, if I would have just created a video and handed it over to you, that would have been totally missed. But now, because we are interacting, then it is more like the probing thing, and I can more and more connect you with the things which are happening out there, the real world experiences, the real world differences between the services, the principles around the programming, the distributed programming, and so on. So that's where we go with this. This is the location, and this point, the project based architecture learning, um, this is more like the outlay of our program snapshot. And then the certification exposure. So a lot of you might be thinking, why certification? So the reason for certification is it brings in a trust basically in your resume. It adds weightage to your resume, and with the kind of learning experience. And I don't know if any one of you have gone through the Azure certification, any of Azure certification recently, or if you know somebody who has gone through it and have studied about it. You can ask them, they will tell you. Now there are a lot of context based questions that comes in, scenario based questions that comes in, that if you are an administrator of a large enterprise and you have to move 100 servers from on prem to the cloud, then there is a specific security you have to follow. What is the type of networking you topology you will choose, and you have to build that topology. It's not like it would still be a multiple choice question, but there is a scenario attached to it. And that's where I'm again keep on saying that for all those scenarios, you have to marry all your understanding, all your technology understanding with the actual use cases. And that will also help you with all of these Azure certifications. Now, another part is mode of learning, right? A lot of times it might become really boring if there is just one mode of communication that is happening. So we try to come up with various different ways to engage you. At the end of the day, the objective here is every single student who has come to Ethan's and then has taken up this Microsoft Azure course, at the end of it, not only you should be well equipped, you should be able to crack the certification or interviews or excel in the companies. But at the same time, like I said, your knowledge, your fundamentals should be grown to an extent that beyond Azure also, it should be a cakewalk for you, that okay, I understand all these concepts, it's just a different naming convention. So when we have to build that kind of knowledge for you, then we also try to ensure what are the different ways in which we can engage with you. We can keep on challenging you, and trust me, don't think of it as okay, I just enroll it, I listen to what somebody is saying, and I'm done. This takes effort from you, but one thing I can promise you, if you can put in that effort that it requires, then you yourself will cherish it for rest of your career. That is given. The way the program is designed, the way our mentors are, uh, the experience we have had with the previous batches, that much I can assure you. So but yeah, these are the different ways we try to interact with you, bring you on board, give you different challenges at different times, uh, and engage you basically. At any point of time, it should not be that it becomes monotonous for you. So that's what you see here. assignments, practical sessions, classroom programs, wherein you are trained by IT professionals. And we also provide the career assistance using job referrals, because we have a very good our own ecosystem from the people um, uh, who have came to us and from our previous batches. So we have a pretty good alumni system. So there also we help you for the job, certification of course, and other things like weekday assistance by professional mentors. So all of it is what you get when you enroll with us. Now, in terms of prerequisite, uh, uh, there is, when we say no eligibility, courses start right from installation, as in you don't have to, it's not like that you need to have some software of your own or nothing like that. It's as long as you have your laptop, you are good. And then we have labs, which is going to be hands-on experiences. There are going to be online assignments. There's going to be mini projects. And again, let me recall, this mini project is not going to be like just you Google, you will get hundreds of mini project. No, it's going to be a real world problem given to you, a real world use case, not a complete use case, because of course that might be very lengthy, but a part of it. But whatever is given to you is going to be a real world problem. Then certification, practice test. So this is essentially the highlights of the course that you're going to get. And project based architecture, so here we are again talking about like real life example POCs, case studies. Your questions were most of the time be answered by relating it to a real world use case, projects that you're going to go through, learning through real time examples. So and forgive me if I am um, mentioning it again and again, but I'm doing so because I'm really passionate about this particular piece. I have seen so many times that people just go get training, and you might be understanding Azure. You might know, okay, Azure has these services for network. Azure has these PaaS services. This is what this PaaS service do, and so on. What you won't be knowing is which one should I use when, because within Azure itself, you will find if I have to pick up a service for compute, there are at least 10 options available. I can do compute using Azure Function, using virtual machine, using uh, uh, Kubernetes cluster, using service fabric, using app service. There are so many options available. You will know about each of them, but you won't know where which one fits in. So that's what only comes through the real-time examples and the uh, real world case studies. Then project assistance. This is even after project post training, we are there to assist you if you get into some, if you have certain questions and so on. So this is a career assistance program which is there, wherein you have a monthly career Q&A, and you have interview and resume toolkit, referral through alumni group, recruiter connect. So all of these services, all of these things that we bring to you as part of career assistance program. And I'll leave on this page because these are some of the frequently asked questions. So if let's say you have any of this, I'll leave this slide here while I go to the Q&A section to see the questions that you guys have asked. But yeah, these are the things that I wanted to cover pretty much. Like I said, starting from the why cloud, then why Azure, and finally why Ethans. So I would encourage you to put down the questions that you have. And I would be happy to answer them.